2.
Hello and welcome to Until Saturday, the Athletics College Football Podcast. We are live, obviously. I am your host, David Ubben, here with my co-host, Chris Vanini. Chris, we got a good semifinal.
We got a good game, baby. We got another good playoff game.
The best playoff game in 8 days. Notre Dame survives with an assist from Drew Aller, 27-24 to advance to the national championship game. Notre Dame is going to play for the title. We don't talk about the last time Notre Dame played for a title, but they're going to play for a title. Probably about the same.
To be fair, that game that Alabama lost in the national championship game was in this same stadium in Miami.
There you go. Okay.
Maybe they got rid of those demons.
Eddie Lacy is not going to be playing. I feel very confident about that. That works in their favor. Anyway, Chris, I think we got to start with Penn State here, because if I'm Penn State, I'm kicking myself, because they controlled that game for the first half, and you looked up and it was 10-0, and then Notre Dame squeezes 3 points out before the half, and you're going to the locker room for Notre Dame. You got Riley Leonard in concussion protocol, but you're still in arm's length of Penn State, and then they come out and play really well to start the second half and sort of took control of that game, went back and forth there. If I'm a Penn State fan, I am in agony at the moment.
I mean, obviously, what did I say on our preview? It was Penn State will play well and just somehow not be winning more than it should be. They have been a frustrating team all season long. I can't believe Notre Dame turned that around. They were getting whipped in that first half on the offensive line, on the defensive line. I don't know what they told them at halftime, but they woke up the echoes, or however you say that, in the second half, and Notre Dame started owning the line of scrimmage. They come all the way back to take a 17-10 lead. Penn State comes back with 2 touchdowns to take its own lead, aided by some questionable calls. There were a lot of questionable calls in this game on both sides. Abdul Carter was held a lot, and it was not called. But it was notable because Notre Dame had 2 interceptions in the end zone that were wiped out. Ultimately, though, we'll talk about that. But I'm fine canceling all that out now, because the teams came back, they overcame it. I'm not saying that decided anything in the game. But, man, if you're Penn State, Drew Aller, man, I mean, our own Nick Baumgartner had been saying potential top 10 pick, and that's what NFL teams were thinking, and they're keeping an eye on him. Penn State did not complete a pass to a wide receiver in this game. They completed passes to 3 different tight ends and 2 running backs.
Quiet night for Harrison Wallace. I mean, here's the thing with Aller is, I get it. I've been covering college football long enough. I've watched the sport long enough. No, I'm saying I get why there's a fascination with the NFL, because he can do the things that a lot of quarterbacks cannot do, but he struggles to do the things that a lot of quarterbacks can do. And I think that is sort of the catch-22 with Drew Aller. And you saw it there at the end. You saw it when he's got, I forget if it was Singleton or Allen, walking into the end zone, and he throws it at the guy's shins, and he can't catch it. And it's just
and guess what?
Dude.
They kick a field goal there. Instead of what should have been a touchdown, that would have been 4 points. You lost by 3. Those are the plays that win and lose you games.
Yeah. I didn't get a good look at the replay of the pick, so I don't have a lot of analysis on the late Aller pick. All I know is that some guys don't make that throw, and some guys do. And at the end of the day, he threw it. A Notre Dame player intercepted it. We're going live here. That's the advantage. But I think ultimately, that's a throw that I think Aller is going to be. You could see it in his face on the sideline. That was a tough shot. You talk about the agony of defeat between him, just with his head in his hands, and then, Franklin's face after the kick went through. You could feel Penn State just felt like they let this get away from them. And you're kicking yourself. You're looking at this game, if you're Penn State, at 10 different places where you could have, some would say should have, taken advantage and won this game, and yet you're going home. Notre Dame is going to Atlanta. An unbelievable game. Just up and down. This. If you're still one of the holdouts, that's I don't like the 12 team. Oh, I didn't like the first round games. Listen, you didn't make the playoff to create great games, but when you have 11 high stakes games where teams' entire seasons are on the line, you're going to get results like this. This was gripping.
And I think part of it too, the 12-team playoff kind of weeds out some of the teams that maybe weren't quite ready to be on this level. And we got evenly matched teams. I think in both the games. I mean, we'll see what happens with Texas, Ohio State tomorrow. By the way, we will be live after the game tomorrow as well.
Yes.
After the Cotton Bowl. I don't know if I'll be on that stream yet or not, because I don't know if I'm going to be at the game or not, because it has snowed all day where I live, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to get to the stadium. So,
do you not have a snowmobile? I thought most people
tuned.
in Dallas had those. Do they not?
No, stay tuned for that. No. Hopefully it all melts tomorrow. So by the way, if you guys haven't subscribed to the channel, like the video, that stuff always really matters to us. And thanks for being live. We got a good comment here from Vance Williams, who says, I can see Drew Aller as a top 5 pick. Certainly reminded me of Zach Wilson tonight. And
some would say Christian Hackenberg, but hey, listen, let's not dwell on Penn State, because I think it's worth noting 2 plays that stood out to me, obviously, in this Notre Dame game. First of all, the Jaden Greathouse play, taking a dude's ankles.
Listen, 2 dudes.
This is that throw from Riley Leonard. Happy birthday, Chris.
we got balloons. We got balloons on the screen.
That's the kind of throw that, like, you know, if not Steph Curry necessarily, but you get like a wide open corner 3 where it's just like, oh my gosh, this is the perfect situation. It's wide open. Sometimes those throws can be the tougher throws. You get in your head, you got a lot of time to think about it. Puts it on him. Greathouse jukes the defensive back there, gets in the end zone to score. That ties the ball game up to get Notre Dame back into it after a really nice drive. And how about Jeremiah Love today, Chris? He tweaks his knee.
What injured knee?
Yeah, exactly. They call it a sprained knee. Unclear which ligament. He barely. I mean, he didn't play hardly at all in the second half. In the quarters, comes out today. Couple things. One, said he wasn't going to hurdle people because he didn't want to risk it. Then he had a hurdle where the dude barely touched him. Incredible play. And then the touchdown run in the first half was, I mean, I think that was his 4th effort. He gets his legs taken out from under him, catches himself, stays upright, keeps pushing, and just an unbelievable run. Powers through to get Notre Dame back in the ball game. And I feel, Chris, I don't want to derail the stream. The Capital One guy is currently on the stage.
I was about to say the same thing.
Okay, Capital One, stop. We got to stop, okay? We can't have the Capital One guy break and contain. First of all, I thought his whole thing was that he didn't leave Capital One banks. And now you got this guy at the Orange.
We're not. Here's my problem. Here's my problem with the Orange Bowl. One, I forgot to say this on the preview. The logo sucks. It's been 10 years since they moved to this logo. Go back to the logo that is Obi the Orange, where he's got his face and everything. Because you know who's right next to Capital One guy right now on this stage? Obi the
baby.
Orange. He's the one who should be highlighted here. It shouldn't be Capital One guy. Let's highlight the orangeness of the Orange Bowl. That is what we love. Also,
some would say Capital One guy, get him out of here.
Get him out of here. Also, apparently, since Capital One's involved, they've been using California oranges in the thing instead of Florida.
That seems like a problem.
That's according to Tim Burke, Bubba Prague, which I cannot believe is a thing. But he's a Florida guy, so he knows this stuff. So that is Orange Bowl. You got to clean a lot of this stuff up. Get Obi the Orange in. Use some real Florida oranges. Let's bring the feeling back. And let's not do whatever that halftime show was, by the way. Let's bring back Ashley Simpson.
I was chasing my child around during halftime. I will say, again, I don't want to derail the show. If you've never had a true Florida orange or fresh squeezed orange juice from Florida orange, it hits different. I don't know how to tell you. It's a different ball game. Anyway,
just like that Dallas cotton, baby. That Dallas cotton hits different when you bite into it.
The Dallas cotton and the Dallas cacti, yeah. It's worth noting that what do we make of the game management in here? There was so much talk about the coaches coming into this ball game and their struggles on the big stage. Certainly, James Franklin, a longer history of that. I come out of this, you know, I don't see a lot of James Franklin in this loss. I see some Drew Aller mistakes. And I think there's something to be said for that. I think that there's a lot of Marcus Freeman in the win and that you keep your team engaged. You know, whatever Michael's secret stuff he had for them at halftime to get them off the mat, you know, it was looking pretty ugly in the first half. And it's like, yeah, you're only down 10-0. Probably should be 14, 17-0. You've gotten away with it, but you're still there. And I think for them to play as different as they did And I think it really is a testament to Marcus Freeman. Mike Denbrock, nice game from him as well. I thought they used Riley Leonard in a really good way. Riley Leonard played pretty well. And, I think I said coming into this game, I picked Penn State to win this game because I thought they had the better quarterback. They had the better pure passer, but Riley Leonard made the throws today when he needed to. And Drew Aller, just a weird game from him. A weird game. Even the two picks that got wiped off the thing or wiped off the scoreboard. The first one was probably a good call on the defensive hold. It was close.
Yeah.
The second one by rule is correct, but it's a horrendous decision. It's a horrendous decision.
It was a bad call. It wasn't.
At the end of the day, if it's underthrown and you've got your hands up and you run into the receiver, okay, it doesn't really matter. If you don't have your head turned around, you're going to get flagged for it. So you can throw it into quadruple coverage or whatever.
Rule. The rule is not your head.
But it's contact. That's the thing. You're going to get the flag thrown.
He didn't touch Warren. He didn't block him from getting back to the ball. Warren was backpedaling still going backwards and just.
He ran into him though before the ball got there, and that's
he barely touched him. You're going to get his arm a little bit.
Either way,
that was a bad fight. By the way, that throw.
Really bad night.
Aller threw that into triple coverage. Now you could say if you don't badly underthrow that ball. Maybe that's a touchdown. Tyler Warren was kind of behind the defense there, but that just goes to show both of these teams, it felt like relied on their quarterback's arms a bit too much in the second half when you weren't expected to. Let me ask you this. At halftime, Riley Leonard, right before halftime, Riley Leonard gets pulled for concussion protocol. Steve Angeli drives him down for a field goal before the half. Big drive.
Low-key MVP of this game, Steve Angeli.
and to keep it a one-score game. And then they say Riley Leonard is coming out to start the second half. My initial reaction was, I don't know if this is the best thing that gives you the best chance to win, because it felt like Angeli opened up the passing game in a way that Riley Leonard didn't. Well, what happens on the next drive? Notre Dame gets a couple of big runs. Riley Leonard hits a big throw to Aeneas Williams, and they were great. But Riley Leonard had a really bad throw, interception in that fourth quarter to DDS, who was back in coverage, and then relying on Drew Aller's arm with 49 seconds or so.
You got to do it. You got to do it. It's 50 seconds. You've got,
I would have tried to run the ball.
I'm using the biggest air quotes we could possibly use. Top 10 pick at quarterback, this guy that everybody in the program believes in. I know you don't have a lot of receivers that can take the top off or a lot of weapons outside of Tyler Warren, but they break a 12-yard run from Allen on the first drive or the first play of that drive. Like, you gotta crank it up. Like, you gotta give him a chance. And I think ultimately, like, you gotta trust your players, trust your guys. And for whatever it's worth, you can say what you want about Aller, but you're still talking about a guy who's got 9 picks on the season coming in. Like, let the kid play. And if it goes down the way it does, I don't think you're going to be sitting here and James Franklin's going to be on the plane back going like, oh, we should have been more conservative and take that into overtime. You got 50 seconds. And what did they have at the time? 2 timeouts? I don't know how many timeouts they had. But you got 50 seconds to get 40 yards. Like, you take that shot every time, especially, when you feel like you got confidence in your guy.
I just think you had a little bit more time to run the ball, like you did on that first play, and stuff like that. So, because they were running the ball well, outside zone was working nonstop. Singleton finished 5.6 yards per carry, Katron Allen 4.3. So they weren't as good as they'd been against Boise and SMU, but they were still having some pretty good success. Penn State rushed for 204 yards and nearly 5 yards per carry in this game. Yeah. That's what's kind of wild. But Drew Aller goes 12 for 23. With an interception, 135 yards, 3 completions to 3 different tight ends, 2 running backs, 0 to wide receivers. That's the problem. It's probably said all year, like the chuck it deep, jokes that we make and all that. The problem is Penn State didn't have anybody that could scare you outside of Tyler Warren. And that's what did it. Here's a quote. Someone just posted this quote. Quote, I want to be in an environment where I have the resources to win a national championship. That was said by Brian Kelly in 2022 when he left Notre Dame for LSU. Now we have Notre Dame going to the national championship, having beaten Georgia and Penn State in its last 2 games to get there. Has this changed your perception of what Notre Dame can be?
Well, I think the Brian Kelly thing is funny, but the sport changed basically as he left Notre Dame and acquiring talent and what that looks like and how you do that. So, yes, I think it's easier if you're at LSU to put together a national championship roster. Sort of. I mean, this seems like their NIL, they've got some issues there, but ultimately, like, it's still probably easier, all things equal. Okay. But at Notre Dame in the NIL era, it does seem like it, especially with the way that they've been churning out quarterbacks, that it seems like it's probably more realistic to do that because you're not having to fight against a lot of the things that have worked against you for a long time in recruiting as the sport has changed. And you're still Notre Dame. Like, you're still a place that, has all of the history, all the things. And if you can go to that school and make money and make as much as you could going to the SEC or going to Ohio State or going to USC or wherever, then why not? So I think the Brian Kelly thing is funny, but I just think like the sport changed the arithmetic. And I think if you look back at the timing, I mean, late 2021, like basically a month before Brian Kelly left was really when Collective started humming. And I think there was still some denial about like, well, how's this going to work? So, is it an all-time bag fumble from Brian Kelly? I mean, maybe, but I think the other side of that is, if Brian Kelly is the coach of Notre Dame and they're playing for a national championship, if you say no to that, I think that's a fair criticism as well. So
I say that all to say also Marcus Freeman has gotten a lot better as a head coach.
Oh yeah.
Handful of, not only in his handful of years at Notre Dame, but just this season. I think you've seen it, the way he's adjusted, the way he's kind of opened up a bit more. He felt a little unsure of how he's supposed to handle himself in that role early on, but as they kind of got rolling this season, you started to see it, especially in the playoff, and now they're just rolling. You can tell that team believes in him. That's like the way Notre Dame came out in that second half, fired up, started to own the line of scrimmage. You have to credit Freeman and the rest of those coaches for getting everybody's mind right and getting focused on doing that. So it just like against Georgia, man, the middle eight, they dominated the middle eight of that game, went into halftime with some momentum, came out of halftime, kick return touchdown. What happens here? They get the field goal right before halftime. They come back to start the second half, get a touchdown. So like that is a sign of good focus and attention from our coaching staff that they have that team ready to come out for the second half. So Marcus Freeman, he will be the first black head coach to coach in an FBS national championship game. Also the first Asian American coach. Yeah, national championship game. His mom is from South Korea, so that's pretty cool.
Shout out to Tiger Woods. Kevin Wise asked, is Marcus Freeman able to be in this spot pre-NIL? No, he's not. Sam Hartman is trying to figure out money in the NFL. Riley Leonard's probably still at Duke or in the NFL. It's not just NIL, but it's the portal as well. The places where people really want to be, whether that's money, whether that is prestige, like Riley Leonard wanted to play for Notre Dame. I mean, wow, it's Notre Dame. Like at the end of the day, like people still want to go there. And you factor in money, and Notre Dame's got plenty of it. That's a factor. So, I think it's just Notre Dame's in a good spot. They haven't been as aggressive as some of the other schools have been. The Oregons, the Texas A&Ms, the Tennessees, Miami, certainly. They haven't been as aggressive as some of those, but they've picked their spots. They've retained talent. They've got a good program builder, obviously, in Marcus Freeman, and it'll be good. By the way, not to belabor the point, I got to see a replay. I have the screen on. The Aller pick is horrendous. Like it's rushed. His receiver doesn't have an inside release. The safety is crashing down on the play. He leads him in like it's a bad throw. It's a bad decision. I mean, that's one that he's under pressure and he forced it. And you were not in a situation where you needed to force that throw at all. If you're down 3, it's a little bit more excusable because like you can't take a sack. You got to make a play. Yeah. But like you take a sack, worst case scenario, you're going into overtime. Horrendous decision and horrendous situational football.
Was there room for him to run upfield on that?
No, he had a guy in his face. He had a guy right in his face. I don't think so.
Yeah.
The DB did make a good play. Purified, a commenter says the very difficult catch as a DB. That's true. DB made a great play, but
he did.
You put the ball in jeopardy, which you can't do, and it's not a good spot to be in. I think, I just keep coming back to for Penn State. Like, man, they had this. They had this. Mm-hmm. They had this, look, and they were the better team for about what? I mean, if you count half the second half, 40 minutes of this game, probably. And
I mean, you take the bad throw / drop, the Katron Allen play in the first half that cost you 4 points. You allow the backup quarterback Steve Angeli to drive down before halftime to kick a field goal. That's 3 points, 7 points right there. And it's just like this game was going to come down to mistakes and who took advantage of them. And Notre Dame threw 2 interceptions. Trying to pull this up, see what Penn State did off of them. Off of the interceptions, Penn State turned one into a field goal, 1 into a touchdown. So they got 10 points off of 2 Notre Dame turnovers, and still lost this game. Like that is really wild. A lot of the things you would look at in this game would have gone in Penn State's favor. The total yardage was about the same. Yards per play was equal. I mean, the game did come down to the end, but it just felt like Penn State was in such control when it was 10-0, and you knew it should have been worse than 10-0. And then suddenly it was 10-10. And it was like, well, we've got a game here. So
yeah,
let's talk about that first half. Notre Dame's offensive line, which is already completely banged up. Abdul Carter plays with Darth Vader written on his eye.
Problematic.
Darth Vader did some pretty bad things. I'm not sure if people know that.
Listen, let he who has not murdered a small school of dozens of children cast the first stone. I'm just saying, Darth Vader, maybe he gets a bad rap.
So they lose one of the offensive tackles, one of their really good offensive tackles, and they cannot pass protect at all.
Yes.
They're not getting anything open. Abdul Carter is constantly getting in the backfield. There was Dane Brugler said he's in conversation for number 1 pick to the Tennessee Titans, Abdul Carter. I think he should be. Dude was playing pretty much with one arm out there. And speaking of like close calls, there's a sack fumble of Steve Angeli on that final drive of the first half. The ball comes right to Abdul Carter, and I don't know how he didn't grab that fumble. I think it's basically because he only had one arm, and offensive lineman pulled it away from him. But you get that fumble, they don't get a field goal. There's 3 points. Like it's a couple of plays there really kept Notre Dame in this.
Yeah.
And then they go, it was Knapp.
Anthony Knapp was the left tackle.
Yeah.
Abdul Carter, though, I mean, the spirit of Micah Parsons and LeVar Arrington, who were on the sidelines tonight, was with him. I don't think it helps at all. It doesn't, put anything to fix those wounds, but Abdul Carter made a bunch of money tonight. Like, he was unbelievable. Yeah. He's been good all season, but when you have these kinds of games against elite competition on this stage, he really was unbelievable. And I don't know why he couldn't get a holding flag. It seemed like they were really officiating this pretty loose. They didn't have a lot of holds. Yeah. The PI calls, in the end zone is one thing. It seemed like there were a few that they let go later. But, it's it was interesting. Chris, do we want to talk about the concussion protocol in this ball game?
Yeah. Well, first off, before we get to that real quick. So Abdul Carter, Jeremiah Love, they were the 2 players. We weren't sure if they were going to play game time decision is what
both
they kept saying.
Both great.
Both were great. I mean, do we think they were always going to play and this was just complete gamesmanship from the coach?
I think you're always going to try. I mean, certainly both of those injuries, it sounds like soft tissue. It sounds like it's going to hurt. You may not be able to go, but you're not going to get worse. You're not going to cause yourself long-term injury for it. It's just about like pain tolerance and like, can you, move and can you, fight if you're Abdul Carter? And, a knee for a running back and a shoulder for an edge rusher is like the worst thing you could probably have. Yeah. But it didn't seem like it bothered him all that much. And, Jeremiah Love wasn't quite still his usual self, but provided plenty of highlights and still looked pretty fresh and still looked pretty good. So,
now let's talk about that concussion protocol, because Riley Lander goes down. Late in the first half, he gets up. He's clearly not right. The referee knows he's not right. A trainer comes out. They take him out. He comes back out for the second. There's a whole halftime. Comes out for the second half. The way I think it was Molly McGrath phrased it was that he was asymptomatic, which
I think what she meant, maybe somebody said that to her. What I think she meant is that he didn't have concussion symptoms. But again, when you look a little lost and a little wobbly when you get up, some would say that in itself is a symptom.
Well, because asymptomatic means you have it and you're just not showing symptoms. So
yeah, again, I think somebody just misspoke. So, But
I
like
hope
we were
so. I hope
texting
he's
with
okay.
we were texting with our other host, Damian Harris, who has played a lot of football, and he was like, "Dude, that was crazy." And both him and both Tyler Warren didn't take huge hits, but they got hit and slammed their head on the turf. I
Yeah,
feel like
Tyler
concussions,
Warren, he's running down
like
the sideline. He gets
50%.
tackled and he falls back. The back of his head hits the out
No,
of
it hit
bounds
it
really
hits
hard.
the tarp on the sideline, which I'm guessing is maybe slightly harder, less forgiving
Yeah.
than the grass. I mean, I've walked on those plenty of times, and I feel like it'd be a little bit rougher than maybe the grass might be. Either way, he's immediately grabbing at his head.
He comes back that same drive.
He was out like 5 minutes, if that. Like it was incredibly fast. I mean, again, some of this protocol, it just seems a little bit reckless and a little bit quick. But hey,
it's good that they were both. It's good that they were both pulled out of the game, because back in the day that just would have.
Well, he couldn't get up. He struggled to get up.
Well, I mean, he eventually got up, and like Riley Leonard was like trying to go back in the game, and they said no. So like, it is a lot better than it used to be, and that is important.
Still probably a long way to go.
And I hope everybody's okay. But those are two hits that look pretty rough.
Well,
yeah.
Penn State season over. Was this a successful season for Penn State, Chris?
Yes. This
was it though? Like, was it? I don't think this does that much for James Franklin in the big picture, because you did all those things, but you did the same thing that you do every single year. And yes, you got to the Final Four, okay, but you got through the regular season. You didn't get particularly close to beating Ohio State. You didn't.
No, you did. You were 7 points. You were lost. It was 7 points to Ohio State. It was close with Oregon, close with Notre Dame, and those are your losses again. It's like, you're right.
Yes.
That is close, but not over the top is the whole thing.
Do you think it matters though that in those losses, the Ohio State losses a lot of the time, the Michigan losses previously, I'm not going to say they haven't been competitive, but you couldn't walk away from those games saying like, oh, they should have won that or they could have won that. It was like, well, if 8 different things go wrong, they're in it. Like, they don't necessarily get blown out, but it feels like, they lose to Michigan by like, what was it, the double digits, but Michigan doesn't throw a pass in the second half. They don't have Jim Harbaugh. And it's like, it felt like they were a mile away from Michigan last year. This year, do you think it matters that like you get to this game against Notre Dame, who might be the national champion, 10 days from now, and like you probably should have won this game, not even could have. You probably should have.
You blow a 10-point lead late in the first half. You blow a 7-point lead in the fourth quarter,
and you can't run a 2-minute drill.
Mm-hmm. And it's like, it's tough, because what happens if it's Ohio State, Notre Dame in the national championship, and you're like, look, our 3 losses were to the 2 teams who played for the national championship, and the only team that went undefeated in the regular season. It's like,
but that's the thing. Great coaches win games that they're not expected to win, or win games that are coin flips, and he hasn't done a lot of that. Like that is what it is.
And so to flip. Okay, so what are your wins this year? You beat Illinois, okay, but you're better than Illinois. James Franklin wins. You beat SMU, ranked 11th or 10th or something like that. Well, you're better than SMU. You beat Boise State
with turnovers.
Top 10 teams. You beat Boise State, top 10 team, but you're better than Boise State. That's the thing with James Franklin, is that he doesn't beat the teams that are better than his team or are equal to his team. I think because of the nature of the 12-team playoff, to win 2 games to get there and lose on a last-second field goal in the semifinal, like, you're like, look, Penn State was this close to going to the national championship. This doesn't feel like some of those others where it's like, man, Penn State is just not on that level. They were this close to being on that level.
It is kind of a Rorschach test. Like, if you hate James Franklin, it's easy to be like, oh, big game James again. And if you like want to defend him, it's like, we were in the Final Four. We outplayed Notre Dame for most of this game. We should have been there. You can interpret it any way you want, but at the end of the day, like, it's a missed opportunity. And like, we've been saying like Penn State's probably the biggest beneficiary of the 12-team playoff. You might not be back here again for a little bit. Like, it may take a while. Like, you got a very nice road. You got a very nice road. Like, being able to not win the Big Ten, but get to the Final Four and be a touchdown favorite in 2 games, like you're not probably going to get that opportunity very many times. And so I think when you look at it from the big picture there, like that's tough. And
you're losing Abdul Carter, and I assume Tyler and Tyler Warren.
Maybe Drew Aller, probably Drew Aller. We'll see.
Probably not Drew Aller at this point. I think he's going to. I mean, look, we'll talk about it on the pod later at some point. But Carson Beck's coming back too. I think Drew Aller's coming back. He didn't play his way into top 10 pick talk. I think, and
12 of 23 for 135 yards. I don't know that got the scouts all hot and bothered. I'm not sure.
And perhaps because of the way he went out. I know the Ohio State loss was a motivator for him to decide to come back. And I'm sure this will be too. So we'll see on that. But like, if Notre Dame had lost this game, and you leave it saying, "Well, we beat Georgia, to get to the semifinals," so like, we can feel good about that. That's the thing with Penn State. You don't have that win. Like Boise State and SMU, I think they're good wins, but you're better than those teams. You didn't have that winner, and that's where it's going to be tough. But Notre Dame, national champion. Remember on this podcast we talked about when they lost to Northern Illinois. And a lot of
good time to hold your stock. That stock that I was holding at week 2, it's through the roof. It's through the roof, Chris.
Yeah,
that Notre Dame stock.
And Damien was like, "This is why I don't like a 12-team playoff, because a team like Notre Dame shouldn't be in it." Well, Notre Dame earned their way to the playoff, man. They beat Indiana. They beat Georgia, who won 2 of the last 3 national championships. You beat Penn State. They earned their way here. And that's going to be a really fun national championship game against whoever it is. If you haven't yet, go listen to our Cotton Bowl preview. It's the most recent episode on the Until Saturday podcast feed. We got great stuff in there. A great story from Damien about why you do not talk to kickers before they kick game-winning field goals. Notre Dame did not talk to their kicker in this
Micah
game.
Jeter was put in a hyperbaric chamber, set aside. I think they had to dig him up to get it back out on the field. I saw somebody actually make a comment. And this actually struck me as like a genius idea for kickers, is that you literally you build like an injury tent, like in the sidelines. It's like blinders on a horse. Like you basically don't let kickers know the situation in the game at all. Like you totally lock them away. It's like playing a Family Feud or something. Like when you go on the what's the third round? Fast money round. Basically, you don't know what you got to get. Like, put the kicker in there. You don't let him tell him what the situation is. Then you just bring him out. He doesn't know what the clock is. He doesn't know where anything is.
Got blinders on. Don't let him see the score. It's like
I love this idea. It's a great idea. I think
it's like those old TV shows where it's like a fever pitch when you're trying not to know what the score of the Red Sox game is, something like that. By the way, I just wanted to shout out Mitch Jeter. By the way, speaking of baseball, 2 field goals, both I think 41 yards. Notre Dame came into this game worst in the country in field goal kicking. We talked about that
by a wide margin.
Yeah, partially because of injuries and whatnot.
Yes.
But Jeter is 5 for 5 in the last 2 games. All of the kicks over 40 yards. What can you say? Jeter is clutch in the postseason, and it came down to a field goal. Notre Dame, national championship game, Texas or Ohio State. We'll talk about that matchup when we know who they're playing, which will be tomorrow night.
Yeah. Chris, we're going to the coaching convention. We'll be there together next week.
Hopefully,
this weekend. This week, we'll see this weekend. But there's always these new products, and I think I need to go on Shark Tank with the kicker chamber that you just lock them in on the sidelines. This is a good idea. I'm sorry, it's a good idea. Mark Cuban, call me. That's gonna do it for our stream. We will be back tomorrow night. Chris, we'll see if you're with us. I'll be with Damien for sure. We'll see if you are with us to talk about Texas and Ohio State. If you are not subscribed to our podcast, you should change that until Saturday on Spotify, Apple, Overcast, wherever you get your podcasts. We are there. Subscribe to The Athletic if you have not also, and the Until Saturday newsletter, which Jana Bardall does for us. And if you're watching us, you should subscribe to our channel, youtube.com/@UntilSaturday. Chris Vanini, David Ubben here. We write for The Athletic and talk about college football on this show with our other co-host, Damian Harris, 2-time national champion at Alabama. Thank you for tuning in. What a night. What a 12-team playoff. This is awesome. We'll see you tomorrow.